Welcome to Did You Know with Richard Utley. During this 1-hour program, join us as we take a look at today's headline news, Richard's views, history, inspirational interviews, and much more. Did you know this program airs every first and third Tuesday at 11 a.m. on Facebook and YouTube? Here's Richard now. Sit back and enjoy today's featured presentation.
Well, good morning and welcome to another Did You Know? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have a very exciting program on today. I think all of you will learn something with the guest that I have on. But before that, I have to get my little 2 cents in before I start that. Well, I'm going to start on 3 things today. 1, ladies and gentlemen, you hear all this talk about Fauci putting the 50 times he said, blah, blah. But people forget Donald Trump did that as well. But it was okay. It was okay. But when somebody else does it, they got issues. The other thing that bothers me about this whole thing is that I had the nerve to see some people get on to talk about health and should we believe the government and why should we believe the government? And a lot of you, I've been telling you all along, we need to do our own history. So I want some of you critics out there to do some research. I want you to understand there's been a disparity of health for people of color for a long time. So we should not be shocked about what anybody says. So I want you to go back and start looking at the Tuskegee experiment. I want you to go back and do your own research. You Google football games and baseball games. So I want you to Google health disparities of people of color, and you will be very surprised. You will also find out during World War I and World War II, they would do these experiments of nerve gas to see how it react. And they would put it on people of color to see how it react before they would use it. So before you start to go out and jump on the bandwagon, start to understand those kinds of things. So I'm just going to say to you, as far as my history lesson for you today, is to go back and do some research on health disparities in the minority community or people of color. And I think you will find out that we have always dealt with this for a long time. So let's not fall into traps. Health is very important to us. And if we keep falling in traps, we're going to be in bad shape. So do your little research on COVID. Do your research on see how many didn't make it. Do your research on the red states and the blue states, and you'll see who's not walking around because of foolishness. Do your research. So those of you, however stand you want to take, just do your research to find that out. Number 2, why do we always try to justify anybody's behavior, no matter if it's wrong? If it's wrong, it's wrong. We've been behind the 8 ball for a long time. So I'm telling all of you now, I'm putting you on notice. We better get ready for the midterm election. And let me just say this to you. We got to get ready for it. I do not want to hear about a march on Washington. I do not want to hear about we shall sing, we shall overcome. Let's put that playbook down. It's old. We got to come up with new ideas. What's the new ideas? We need to mobilize. We need to get people registered to vote. We need to make plans because we don't have a choice, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm saying this to all of you. The Divine Nine, you got to get together. I'm telling you, social organization, Groove 5 Groove, Swing 5 Swing, Masonic, we don't have a choice. We're in a war, ladies and gentlemen. And we're on the losing side. And if we don't do anything, then shame on us. I'll just say this to you. If we go to the side and win, and that side next time, in 2 years, if they don't do what we knew, we get rid of them. We need to come up with a mechanism of we punish those who don't represent us and reward those who do. I keep telling you, our vested interest is the most important thing here. And we don't realize that. It's all around you. Things are changing. You just assume everything gonna be okay. You senior citizens, you've been walking around, I don't know if I want to vote it. What they getting ready to do to Medicare? What are they getting ready to do with your prescriptions? What are they getting ready to do to them? What you gonna do? Those of you who are worried about sending somebody to cause, they cut the grant, they cut the funds, they cutting SNAP, they cutting all this. Who do you think? Yeah, it affects us. Yeah, it affects other people too. But maybe they don't realize they're not voting in their vested interest. But we have to vote in our vested interest. And I'm telling you this as a fact. I'm telling you something I know. We got to start winning. We have to come together. And we have to show that without us, you can't win. But with us, you can win. But we got to be on all the same team. So I'm telling all the churches, I'm telling all the social, I'm telling all the Masonic, we got to get together because we got to show them you're not going to take us for granted. And we're going to decide who wins and who don't win. Now you may say, well, Richard, you're crazy on this. But let me ask you this. Remember, this is a Did You Know program. Well, let's just take Mac. They decided that they were going to support their candidate and everything that candidate said he was going to do for them. That's what they expected. Now, we have to do the same thing. We're saying this is what we want, because if they don't do what we want, we're out of here. So as we sit back and we keep saying, oh, it doesn't make a difference, it don't care, they're going to do what they want to do anyway. They've been selling us that for a long time. So my point of today, my history lesson to you today is do some research on health disparities for people of color. That's all I'm asking you. Just do some, just Google it, it'll tell you. And the reason why, because I want you to read up what's been going on about us. Because we act like, some of us act like, well, we didn't know this. You did know it. So there's no excuse at this point for us not to know what's going on. So that is my lesson today. And the other lesson is at the end, those of you who haven't get registered to vote, you got to do it. I'm not saying the Democratic Party is perfect. I ain't saying the Republican Party is perfect. I'm not saying that. But we have to mobilize for our best interests. So that's it today. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very privileged today to have someone on today that's going to talk about education and the importance of education. And a lot of it in the minority community. See, we forget a lot of things. So I'm bringing her on because she's going to tell it like it really should be told. And me and Nikole, you know, we related, so I don't allow her to get off the hook. So I want her to tell it like it really should be told. And that's why I have this program, because I keep telling you, we have to define our own interests. We have to look at what's really for us. We can't sugarcoat anymore. And so I have her on, and I'm going to have Dr. Nikole Hollins-Sims to tell you who she is.
Well, first off, I have to say thank you to Richard Utley for this amazing opportunity to sit in front of all of you and tell you my journey and share my story. So I sound like Sophia Petrillo on Golden Girls when she says, picture it, 1980. I'm not going to take you that far back, but that's the year I was born. And so you can do the math on how long I've been at this game of education. But I was born into it because I have educators all throughout my family. Dr. Audrey Utley, Mrs. Yvonne Hollins, two powerhouses in education in this local area that have really shaped and molded who I am, what I do, and how I do it. And so first and foremost, my mom, Mrs. Yvonne Hollins, is my rock, my architect. And anytime I'm around the country and I talk about belonging and how powerful education can be, I always start with her story, because her story started in the William Howard Day projects. And she was told in high school that she should not become a teacher because she lived in the projects. And because of that, my family is one, and Richard can attest to this, we don't take no for an answer. And so right away, my grandmother instilled in her that, oh, you're going to do whatever you set your mind to do, and we're going to make sure that happens. And so having that blueprint was something that I witnessed very early in my life. And I was able to witness education and leadership in education at a very early age. So much so that my same parent, my mom, ended up being my assistant principal when I was in high school at Central Dauphin East High. And for that, I never had a boyfriend. I never had any of those typical high school experiences because people were afraid of her in that leadership role, which hindsight looking back was a good thing because she showed me what true leadership could look like and have people honor and respect you for the skills that you bring forward. So that was important to me. Upon graduating from high school, I then went on to Millersville University in Lancaster and had the opportunity to major in psychology. You may say, well, Nikole, you said education. Well, I also wanted to know why people did the things they did. And so psychology became really important to me. By the time I got done with those 4 years of undergraduate work, I had no idea what I was going to do with a psychology degree. Luckily, I had some great advisors who just said, you sound like you really like kids. You sound like school is something that you gravitate toward. You come from an educational based family. Why don't you try school psychology? And so at that point, I took a leap and I said, I don't even know what school psychology is, but I'm going to try this out. And thankfully was able to do graduate work at Millersville again to earn my master's, and then returned to Harrisburg School District as a school psychologist intern and stayed in Harrisburg School District for about 8 years. And I can say with very much, I don't know if the word is excitement or just, I'm just glad that I had that opportunity because I was able to work at Roland Academy, which at the time was one of the schools that no one wanted to work at, and see that school transform under the guidance of myself and our PBIS team, which I'll talk to Richard about what PBIS is in a minute. But it shaped and molded what that school could be in a positive school climate. From there, I went to Susquehanna Township School District because I wanted a change. And I thought I could do the same thing I did in Harrisburg and Susquehanna. It just wasn't designed for that. And so I realized that I wanted to do something even more. And I was given the opportunity to go to the Pennsylvania Training and Technical Assistance Network, which then allowed me to do trainings and instruct teachers across the state on the different strategies on how to make classrooms better and more welcoming for students that look like me and others. And so that opportunity then led to working at the Pennsylvania Department of Education and being asked to be the special assistant to the Secretary of Education in 2021 to focus primarily on equity, inclusion, and belonging. And that to me has been a pinnacle part of my career because I had the highest level of influence as a school psychologist in Pennsylvania. And I was also named the Pennsylvania School Psychologist of the Year in 2021. Politics was not for me. And so after a year of doing that, I went on to what's called the Midwest PBIS Network, which is a more nationally based organization that does systems change for schools. And that expanded my reach. I have been in Pennsylvania my whole career. So now I'm touching Kentucky, Indiana, Michigan, Illinois, and being able to see what education can really do and that I'm attached to it. And after a while, I said, you know what? I can do this myself. And so my husband and I decided to take a leap of faith and we started Hollins-Sims Consultation. And I've been doing that for 3 years now. We're successful. I count success as having one client and we have 25. And so I'm grateful for that. And I'm happy that I have folks like Richard who support and make sure that we get exposure. And so that's my journey.
Well, I think that's very important. I will say a couple of things. A lot of people listen to this program, not just in Harrisburg, but I have people from all over.
Yeah.
That's why I have this program called Did You Know? Because I want people to see people like you. If you can do it, they can do it. But sometimes they have to be exposed to it.
Yes.
And they have to take that leap of faith. And I've always been a big believer that one of our problems in our community, and I say this all the time, is that we got to become more visionary. We got to become much more enterprise. We got to reach back and pull back up. And that's what this is all about. Now, what's very interesting and what you said was very interesting is that, yes, I am very much, you come from an educational background, but you said something when you talked about psychology.
Yes.
And when you talk about psychology, I'm going to flip the script a little bit. So when you look at it, you begin to choose this. How do you see the differences into, and you said it, in terms of a urban school and a rural school?
Oh, wow. Great question. So thankfully, I've been able to be in both to have that exposure. I will say that an urban school district is one of the most enriching environments that you can be in. Sometimes urban school districts get a bad rap. I said earlier that I was in a school no one wanted to work in, and that's because oftentimes educators that are coming into an urban district don't fully understand always the context they're working in. And so when they're in school, in college, getting their degrees and then coming out into the field of education, they have these big dreams. I had them too. That's why our mantra is dream out loud. So you have these ideas of what you think it will be like. And then when you get in, sometimes you get a rude awakening, or you think you know more than them. And they have the lived experience that you could learn from and grow from. So I saw a lot of my colleagues in urban centers not stay long because, for one, they didn't understand the neighborhoods they were serving. They didn't understand the clientele that they were serving, meaning the families, the communities, and that they were providing a service to them. I think that is a mindset that in urban districts, you have to have servant leadership at the core, because if you don't, you're going to come in with a savior complex that you need to save everybody. Folks don't need saved. They need cultivated. They need enrichment. They need education. And so if you come in with that humble spirit, you're able to do more in an urban district. What I found in the suburban district was that there was an almost like an arrogance, if you will, a feeling of we have it all together. We're doing the best things. We're innovative. Our students come in, they have food, they have shelter. We don't have to worry about so many of the things that you hear about happening in urban spaces. What they don't realize is that a lot of times the urban districts are miles ahead of them in terms of implementing programming, being innovative in how they do that, being culturally responsive in how they do that. And what I found in my suburban experience, and it's not just the one that I went to right after Harrisburg, but others that I've supported as a consultant, is that they are now seeing a shift in their populations. And they're coming to me saying, we don't know what to do. Our demographics are changing. And for me, it shouldn't matter if your demographics are changing, if you're doing effective and best practices. And I can honestly say urban districts are doing that. They're just not always given the opportunities to leverage the good things that they have going, or they cut funding, or we lose people in, the transition of our job force. A lot of people don't want to come into education anymore. If you go to colleges now, Millersville being an example, we used to be one of the highest education degree spaces. The numbers are not matching because students in the undergraduate level aren't interested in education anymore.
Why do you think there's this big rap on minority teachers?
Mm-hmm.
And especially, I want you to address two. Minority teachers, one, and then male and female.
Yeah. So there's a couple things that I have to say. There's a great organization, shout out to the PEDC, the Pennsylvania Educator Diversity Consortium. They have been doing amazing work policy-wise around the state, trying to fix a leaky pipeline of educators of color getting in front of students of color. So the statistics, I'm probably going to blow your mind. Maybe not, Richard, because you know a lot about this type of thing. But maybe for our audience, you may not know that in our Commonwealth, our state of Pennsylvania, about 96% of the teaching force is white. However, the percentage of students of color is somewhere in the 30 to 40% range. That's disparate. So what is that telling me? One, we have an overrepresentation of teachers and educators who don't look like the students they're serving, one, and may not have a shared lived experience, two. I can honestly say, and I'm again dating myself, when I was in high school, I had one Black teacher. She was female. When you talk about male and female too, we have an overrepresentation of females in education as well. So if I only experienced one teacher in 1990, fill in the blank, it hasn't changed that much up until 2026. And so organizations like PEDC and others are trying to find ways to recruit educators of color. But one thing that I will say that they've been good at and that I also agree with, we can't stop at recruitment. So just saying, you should be a teacher, you should be a school psychologist, a school counselor, we need you. Like, that's our pitch often. What happens though is once we recruit them, we go away and they're stuck in a system that doesn't support them enough to retain them. So the retention part to me is where the rubber meets the road, that I, as an educator, decide I want to stay here. I'll say really briefly, sometimes you get people who come into these situations. For one, let's say someone who lived in Philadelphia comes to Harrisburg and starts working. One of the first things that, I'll just speak for Nikole and other women of color, first thing I want to know is, where can I get my hair done? In certain spaces, if no one knows that, I already feel isolated, othered, not a part of this larger community where I can be myself and feel good about being myself in this space. If I don't have that connection, that sense of belonging as an adult in a school setting, I'm probably not going to last very long.
But I think that what you said is not just in education, it's in a number of areas.
Yeah.
And the reason I know that for a fact is that many of you know that I have the Central Pennsylvania Black Directory. It was very interesting when the Penn State Hershey Medical Center, they were always in my directory as an advertisement, but not really. They did it more to support that. But what they really wanted the directory for was that when they recruited, and then when people would look at the area, they would flip to see where the barbershops and the beauty shops were.
That's right.
So what you said is very true. I know
is.
that. I'm saying I know that for a fact. So in saying and saying that because it's very important. So you see yourself as a, let's say, a champion to try to get school districts to understand that they need to look at the big picture about, as you brought up, about what's coming in. And I do understand, because not only just in education, in the medical field too. But me being at Hamilton Health, the same thing. People come there and they get certain credits and certain loan forgiveness, and then as soon as they get it, they're out of here. They're out of here. And sometimes we say that the education has not been over sensitive to us. So would you say, from a hypothetical, what are some of the things that you think that the school districts should be doing, but at the same time, right now, it ain't favorite to try to just say minorities and you're doing things for them. And one of the things that upsets me so often is that people really believe that, quote unquote, affirmative action gave you an advantage. Ladies and gentlemen, we ain't never been on equal field. Let's understand that. Pull yourself up by the bootstrap. We ain't had no bootstrap to pull up. Okay, let's see. I want to be real on this program because I think this is important. So I'm asking you to explain that, because the problem is now people are afraid to say diversity because it's created such negative things, and they don't understand. I tell people this all the time. Nobody wants anybody of incompetency. I don't care what color you are. If you can't do the job, you got to go. And I'm just so upset sometimes because I watch TV and I read stuff, and it makes it seem like, oh, you just gave me a break because you just gave me a break. Okay, you say, okay, Richard, you are part of the affirmative action, blah, blah, blah. Whoa. But when I had to take the test, they didn't give two different tests. They gave the same test to everybody. So if you didn't understand it, you wasn't going to pass the course. But people don't want to talk about that. They just want to say unfair advantage. What unfair advantage? Remember, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm glad we're talking because I'm getting upset about education, because some of us ought to be ashamed of themselves. Can't read and write. There was a time they didn't allow us to learn how to read and write. They didn't encourage reading and writing. So now I hear it all the time. Well, we can't do this and we can't do that. So I got off the topic a little bit, so I want you to explain that. But I got to say this here. I was reading something the other day, and now this school, and they want to give out, all these people give out book bags.
Yeah.
And somebody wrote, why why are we giving book bags every year to the same kids? Every year they get a book bag. So what do they do with the book bag? And I thought about what they said, called even at the Camp Curtin, why are we giving out book bags? Everybody gets out book bags, same book bags. And then somebody said, wouldn't it be better if you concentrate on teaching them to read?
Wow.
I didn't know what to say. So
I mean, okay, this is good. I think there's a both and to that.
okay.
Because I'm one of those believers of Maslow before you bloom. So my educator friends in the audience will understand what I mean. When we talk Maslow, we're talking basic human needs. So physiological, home, shelter, food, psychological safety, physical safety, feeling like you are a part of something. That's the belonging component. And then that leads to achievement. So for me, when I hear someone say, well, why aren't you focusing on them knowing how to read? My retort to that would be, if they're hungry, they're not worried about what you're putting in front of them to read. If they don't have shelter, they're not worried about that. So how do we create a both and where the systems intersect and they foundationally feel safe and secure enough to now listen to the lesson, to now want to have the book in front of them? And I think that's where education as a country, nationally, we have missed the mark for a number of decades by focusing so much on test scores rather than securing the spaces that our students are in so that they can adequately learn in a better environment. And so for me, the learning environment becomes critical.
Okay, let's go back to now, since you talked about inclusion and things of like that, I'd like you to elaborate on that because,
Sure.
one of my people that text me said affirmative action does not mean opportunities for the unqualified. And once we get it, we have to perform with excellence.
Absolutely.
So that was one response. So how do you respond to that?
Well, I completely agree. I think one of the things that we misinterpret, and I think, Richard, you said it perfectly, is this assumption that we're getting a handout or that we can be the most, mediocre person and we were given this job because we have a certain skin tone or a certain gender. And that could be further from the truth. When I look at the people that I've been surrounded in my career by, as well as my family, we worked hard for everything we had to do. And so I find it offensive that someone would just assume that I only got where I am because of fill in the blank. That discredits all of the journey that I just took you on. So I agree. I think inclusion is important. For me in education, when I talk about equity, inclusion, and belonging, something you also said that I think can't be neglected in the conversation is this concept of access and opportunity. Both of those things have to in tandem exist in schools for students to be able to feel included and feel like they belong. So when I think about March 13th, 2020, it's a date that lives in infamy for educators across the country. That's the day our governor shut schools down during COVID. He said, that's it, you're going home, we got to protect you. I will say, and I stand on this, educators were probably second behind first responders in having to quickly pivot and do things they had never been expected to do before. And so getting devices in the hands of youth, making sure they knew how to get on them, making sure we as educators knew how to deliver in a virtual space that many of us had never done before. But what we didn't account for in our state, and I'm sure nationally I can speak to this, we didn't account for Wi-Fi deserts all over the Commonwealth. So we gave access by giving a device, but the opportunity to leverage that access and do something with it, they didn't have Wi-Fi to do. So students were going to McDonald's parking lot, a church's parking lot, going to a friend's house simply to be in class. And so when we talk access opportunity and why people are all up in a tizzy about this word equity, it's not this pop culture version. In education, it's about making sure that every student has that access and opportunity to learn and to be productive citizens.
Okay. No, I want to have just a general conversation with you. I mean, so tell me, what are some of the things that you think is so important that I want you to share to the audience?
Yeah.
Because I'm getting comments, but my point is this here. That's why we have Did You Know? Because I want you to tell my audience things that you think we should know.
Okay. Well, that's good. All right. So a couple things I think you should know. For me, one of the most pressing issues in education right now is the fact that the society that we're in is moving at a pace faster than our educational system. What do I mean by that? Essentially, you have artificial intelligence. AI is prime center, outpacing a lot of the things that are happening in classrooms. We as educators are trying to keep up. We're trying to figure out what's the newest thing. How do we keep students engaged when they can go right on Google and get an answer? When they can go to Chat GPT and get an answer? How do we secure the learning environment so that we're not falling trapped to that? Rather, we're utilizing it in a more productive and safer way. I'll give an example. There's work being done right now, research-wise, around how students that are isolated in school, they don't have friends, they're not connected to anyone, they're being bullied, for example. Guess where they're getting their connection from? An AI bot. Because the bot is being their friend. They're being connected to something that's inanimate. And that's how they're getting what they need to feel like they're a part of something. We know that that can be dangerous because even forget AI for the moment. Anytime someone feels like they aren't connected, they fall into spaces that probably are not good for them. Think about gangs. Think about radicalization that we see online. So these are real pressing issues in education. So when we talk about the inclusion part of that equity, inclusion, and belonging discussion, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where students can say, okay, I'm on a team, I'm in a club, I have someone at this school that actually cares about me and knows my name when I walk through the door. Those things matter. And if they can be done on a consistent basis, then this student or students can feel a sense of belonging. And for me, belonging means being accepted, validated, treated fairly, like all the things that we know we as adults need to in our workplaces, because that's another thing. We're losing teachers and educators because they're not feeling a sense of belonging in their school systems either. So I just feel like all of these components are interconnected and they get this pop culture kind of layer to them where people dismiss it or say, oh, I don't want to talk about that, or you're just giving them handouts. Think about students with disabilities. Students with disabilities need access and opportunity. When you go to a grocery store, there's a ramp there for wheelchair access. That is equity. These are little things that you may not even know. When you use your left hand versus your right hand and things are designed more for right-hand people rather than left-handed people, that's an inequity. So these things show up in our everyday world. Why wouldn't they show up in education? And why shouldn't we be concerned about making sure things are equitable and not necessarily always equal? One last example that I use a lot. My husband loves to wear Jordans. He's a Jordans fan. If he were to buy, which he likes to do for myself and my son, a family set of Jordans, he'll wear a size 12 and a half. If he buys a 12 and a half for me or my son, we're going to fall all over because that's not the size that fits our foot. So equal does not mean equitable. If we all got the same thing, we wouldn't be able to do the things we do uniquely that's specific to us. So I think that's another, did you know, the difference between equality and equity and why we have to talk about it in schools.
I think, okay, now that you said that, let's deal with the family.
Let's deal with
Let's
it.
deal with the family in the neighborhood. What do they need to be doing?
Yeah, okay. So I'm a mom, so I think I can say this with some certainty. You have to show up for your kids. And that may look a lot of different ways. So part of my research has been on family and community engagement with schools. That research was primarily focused on caregivers of children of incarcerated parents. So let's say a grandparent is taking care of a child whose father or mother is incarcerated, or it's an aunt, or it's a cousin. My point is, what I found through that research was that when the student came home and said, Uncle Richard, we're having this event at school. I really want you to come. If you come, I get to get a free book because my parents showed up or my family showed up. Uncle Richard is going to be more inclined to go because the child asked him directly. That's what my research showed, that the likelihood of families participating was contingent on the student asking. So that's one component. The other thing is, and I understand this, as a mom, I get it. You have a lot on your plate. You may not be able to make every event. You may need childcare. You may need transportation. Understood. Reinforce what the school is doing at home then. To me, there's no excuse to not be engaged and involved with your child and through school. It can look different ways. It can be showing up and volunteering, but it could also be when they bring that homework home, you're making sure that homework's getting done. Or if the teacher sends something home and says, his behavior was a little off today, could you speak to him? I, as mom, need to reinforce that. So those are little easy things that can be done because we both have a shared responsibility in cultivating the village that we're supporting.
So what is your response in terms of community and institutional?
Mm-hmm.
And when I say institutional, is that I'm a big believer that a lot of organizations should be more supportive of the community and children.
Yes.
And now, of course, it was a little different when I was growing up because the church was the major pillar. So I'd like for you to speak on that.
Yeah. That's a good point because, and it's funny you mentioned it because I was watching something, on Instagram, you're scrolling and something captures you. And this gentleman was talking about how he really misses the church as a third space. And I said, what's a third space? What do you mean by that? And where he explained it was that oftentimes you have the home and the school, first and second space, right? Child is getting exposure to things, learning things, growing in things. The church, the way, and Richard, you and I probably had a similar experience, the church became that third space. Sunday school, I'm learning things. I learned how to speak in front of thousands of people from being at church.
Especially the Easter program.
Yes.
No, I'm laughing about it.
But it's true.
Ladies and gentlemen, Easter. You all know you had to learn that line, you had to memorize it, and you had to go to the Easter program.
Yes.
Everybody had to do that.
Everybody.
And that helps you to learn how to read. That helps you to learn how to articulate in front of a crowd.
That's right.
And even though what said you had to memorize it because you did not want to embarrass your family.
Correct.
And that's the other issue we have because there's no ownership now. They don't care. And that's why I asked you about family. And that's why I asked you these questions was because I hear too often kids are told they can't. And because they hear the word they can't, then they believe.
Yes.
And I think it's our responsibility to motivate, to uplift. And so therefore, I think that's why I asked you about family, because we got to take some responsibility too.
Absolutely.
See, a lot of time we blame it on the school or we blame it on everybody else but your own household. And sometimes your behavior is adapted to what you see or what you know.
That's right.
And so that's why I wanted to make these people out there be accountable, these parents or friends or whatever, be accountable because they're being led by folks that don't need to lead them.
How about that?
So would you respond to that?
I mean, I think you're right on the money. I think we have to take ownership of our community. I think when I hear you talking at the beginning about, midterm elections, for example, and mobilizing can be very, to me, small focus to macro focus. So when I hear midterm elections, that's a macro focus mobilization. But mobilization can happen in the neighborhoods, can happen in communities, it can happen in counties, and we can keep expanding it systemically. I feel like that's what's missing in a lot of our school districts across not just Pennsylvania, but across the nation, is this intensive mobilization to say, why are our scores the way they are? Why are we experiencing so much violence in our schools? Why are school shootings happening? All of those questions need to not just be asked, but actually, what are we going to do about it? We can't just sit around and talk about it. What is the action that needs to follow through? So I'm in a full agreement with you. I think we have a responsibility that no one else can really own but us.
And I think that's important. And one of the problems I have, but it's unique, it's not unique, is that when we look at media, it always hypes our neighborhood. It always hypes our school. It always hypes, I hear it all the time. I don't want to go here. I don't want to go there because I'm scared. I said, what are you scared of? And they'll say, I'm scared. You're going at 3 o'clock in the middle of the afternoon. What are you scared of? But that's because we've been sensitized to those kinds of things. I have some other questions here for you. We talked about how can families in the community engage with schools?
Yeah. So that engagement part, I think, well, I always talk about it as a partnership. So one side should not have more responsibility than the other. So when I think about family and community partnerships, one thing that I do tell schools to think about is not always having events at the school because there are so many of us that were students that did not have positive experiences at those buildings, whether we ourselves were a student or we had other children that went to the school and we had a poor experience coming in. I often share this example too. I've been in spaces where I've gone into school and I get it. It's busy. It's a lot going on. And the first person you see can make or break whether or not you ever want to come back to that building, whether it's walking in and the first thing you see is a metal detector, or it's walking in and the first person that greets you is not very friendly. I've had people say, just go sit down. We're in the middle of something. And I'll say, I'm here from the State Department of Ed. Don't care. And still, this is the reception you get. So as a parent, that can make or break whether or not I want to be a part of this school community. A way to kind of naturally dissolve that barrier is to host things in community settings. So, Richard, I know YWCA, Boys and Girls Club, Hamilton Health Center. These are places where schools could host events and bring the community to those events, and they might feel a little bit more comfortable being there, and you get a 2-for-1. You not only learn about the school, but you learn about the community resource that might be available too. And I think sometimes we miss the mark on how to be very intentional about those partnerships and leveraging both of them.
Okay. Tell the audience about your the services that you provide, your core services. Sure. And not only that, but even though it's on there, tell them how they can reach you. I know you have some books and stuff, and my audience want to be able to figure out how to contact you. So please give my audience that, because that's the other issue. Availability, how and why we can get connected. And that's why I've always said institutions was so important. Because we were talking earlier about Easter, but at the same time, I thought about it and I sat here for a few minutes and said, you know what? When you went to church and things of that, you saw people of different magnitudes and different careers, but everybody was all the same. No matter where everybody was the same. I go back at the doctors, the lawyers, whoever, we was all the same. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The only caveat to this, I did not realize we was all poor. We didn't know that. I did not know that. I didn't know we was all poor. Okay, I just did not know that, but it's okay. No. But I like to sometimes have some light. So just tell us about your core services, and I want you to take the next 10 minutes to tell my audience the things what you do and how they can help you and how you can help them to make an impact on education for us.
I love it. So again, thank you for the opportunity to share this. So Hollins-Sims Consultation is where we dream out loud to make all systems fly. And I'll explain all of that in a moment. But I have to, again, just say that part of our work is really centered around educational enrichment of learning environments and creating spaces where students feel like they belong, where they can have inclusive opportunities, and where equitable practices are performed. Not only that, we are an educational entity, but we also work with organizations, corporate organizations, primarily talking about workplace well-being, because we know if adults are whole, they show up better for the students and children that they live with, and that in turn then manifests in the classrooms that we're supporting too. So understanding how teams work, understanding adult thinking as well as youth, and how they function. Because I have this psychology background, I've been able to really spread my reach and be able to really connect with all different types of people around different types of topics. Those are the main ones that we highlight. The other few that we do are around what's called multi-tiered systems of support, or MTSS. So for my educator friends, that might be a familiar term. For the rest of our audience, I'm going to break that down really briefly. What it essentially means is that in schools, from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, schools need a system to guide how they deliver practices. Practices can be how they're instructed, how behavior and discipline happen, how safe it is in the building, how connected students are. Multi-tiered systems of support allows us to start at what's called tier 1. Tier 1 is universal, meaning everyone gets access to something, whether that is courses, instruction, etc. Tier 2 might be students who need a little extra support. Let's talk reading. So at tier 1, everyone's getting a reading curriculum, but there's some students who struggle with comprehension, struggle with reading quickly. They may need a separate group to help them do better, or to do an intervention, if you will, to learn the skill in a different way. Then you have tier 3. At tier 3, these are our most intensive interventions delivered to students who have demonstrated need in academics, behavior, or course performance. All of these things factor into how a student shows up. Part of our role at Hollins-Sims Consultation is not only to help you understand in schools what MTSS does, but also how to make sure that it is culturally responsive and effective for every learner. So what does that mean? Essentially, we're making sure that every student knows that they have a place in that building. We know that for eons and decades, the educational system has been driven towards a certain type of student. That type of student doesn't exist as much anymore. There are all different walks of life that are now in front of us. So we have to design our systems in a way that are responsive to them and cultivate the richness that they bring forward. That's what I come and do with teams, with faculty, with leadership, administrators, superintendents, and we do trainings, workshops. In addition to that, on the national level, I'm a part of what's called the Center on PBIS. It's a national center that's federally funded. We do national work around how to implement better positive behaviors in schools, how to create better school climates. And through that work, I'm able to do keynotes and speak in front of thousands of people. On my own, outside of the Center of PBIS, I've had the opportunity to do keynotes across the country as well. Shout out to California, one of my favorite states that invites me quite often. I'm trying to get into other states, so maybe I can get a 50-state tour. But anyway.
Oh, we're going to work on that. No. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to work on that. Listen, I interrupted.
That's okay.
Listen to what she said, but it don't mean anything if we don't take her knowledge and put it in the places that it needs to go. So some of you listening to this, and some of you know your little school districts, and you know your school district, you might want to call the doc up. So go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm hopeful that I get more opportunities to do keynotes like we were just talking about. I love being in front of big crowds where I feel like my impact can reach multiple people, thousands of people. I've had an international opportunity to speak in Australia. So there's things out there that allow me to showcase the work that I know is valuable and important and making schools and education better. So that's what we do. Look, and my website. Okay, so you can reach me a couple ways. First off, our website is www.Hollins-Sims. I got to spell it out for you. HOLLINSSIMS consult, CONSULT.com. Visit us there. You'll see all of the services that we provide. I mentioned earlier, workshops, keynotes, coaching. We're available to you. In addition to that, we do expert reviewing. So I've had entities reach out and say, hey, we just created this new strategic plan. Would you review it? Let us know if it is culturally responsive, if it does hit all the marks to make sure all of our students are getting what they need and our staff as well. So that's a newer service that we've begun. But other than that, I have a YouTube channel, Hollins-Sims Consultation. Just search for it on YouTube. You'll see some videos. We're starting to cultivate more there. And this will be posted there, I hope.
Well, you can see we have your stuff.
Yeah. And we have podcast opportunities that I've been a part of. So if you want to listen to me more, you can do that as well. In addition, we're on Instagram under Hollins-Sims _consultation. You can find us there. I'm also on Facebook under Hollins-Sims Consultation and LinkedIn under Dr. Nikole Hollins-Sims. And my last one is I'm on Substack. If you have not joined Substack, it is a very cool place. A lot of people put great energy into that virtual space. They're writing essays, they're sharing their journeys. And so Substack, you can just Google my name under that and find essays and things that I'm putting out to the world to learn more about me. So that's me in a nutshell.
Well, that's you in a nutshell, but it's a nutshell, but let me ask you some other questions.
Yeah.
Now you told the services that you provide.
Mm-hmm.
I want you in closing to tell my audience how you see the big picture, but not as a consultant,
Okay.
but as growing up in the community that you grew up in,
Mm-hmm.
being a mother,
Yes.
and the vision you see that what we need to do
Mm.
to make life better for us.
That's heavy, Richard, but it's a good question. So taking that professional hat off and putting on a personal hat, I feel like what I do is a ministry. In that, I want the best for everyone. One of the things that I talk about in part of my work is dignity and honoring dignity in others. And I think when we do that as a collective, we do have the power to shift atmospheres. We do have the power to make change. And I go back to the word you brought up at the top of this talk, mobilize. If we're able to just acknowledge that we may not agree on everything, like you said at the beginning, no party is perfect. No person is perfect. But if you can at least acknowledge that human to human, you have a shared dignity with me, there's inherent worth in you and me, then we have the ability to work together and learn and grow from each other so that we can make better opportunities. When I look at my son, he's 8. When I look at him, I see power, potential, and purpose. I want that for him, but I know I can't do that by myself. There will be other people that he will encounter that I pray will love him the way I love him and want to see that in him in the same way. If we approach everything we do with that lens, we have the power to make significant change. So as a mom, I need y'all, just like you need me. As a community, we need each other. And so we just got to take it by the reins and say, let's do this, because if we don't, who will? And we have a responsibility.
I think with that, I don't think there's much more for me to say other than, audience, you've heard her. We need her. We need to get her in areas that needs to hear what she has to say. And I'm a big believer we have to support one another.
Yes.
And remember, I'm a believer and we got to reach back and pull. Because let me tell you, I didn't get to where I got to if it wouldn't have been for some people reaching back
That's
and
right.
pulling me. It's my job now to reach back and pull up. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you enjoyed this program. You have it all here. You can go on her Facebook. Would you bring up her Facebook, her website one more time, please? Hold on, ladies and gentlemen.
Sorry, this close, dude.
I'm just going to do this so you can see it one more time.
Thank you again, Richard, while you're pulling it up. Appreciate you.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. See, we do top shelf. Go ahead. Just run through it real quick.
Yeah, this is cool to see in real time. But yeah, you can find out everything we do. Yep, all of it. Coaching, keynotes, and I'm a systems thinker. So I love working with individuals, but I'm more interested in making bigger impact, and that only happens with systems.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. And see you in 2 to another Did You Know? Have a good evening.
Thank you for watching Did You Know with Richard Utley. Please mark your calendar and join us every first and third Tuesday at 11 a.m. on Facebook and YouTube. Did you know? If you would like to be a guest on the show, or if you have an interesting topic or individual that you would like to see us discuss during future broadcasts, you can reach out to us on Facebook at Richard Utley. Until next time, have a nice day, and we will see you again for another Did You Know, and can be found on most of your favorite social media platforms.